The Tuesday afternoon was like any other. Sunlight streaming through the tall windows of my downtown Denver office. The hum of computers a low backdrop to the focused click of my keyboard. I was deep in quarterly reports, dissecting numbers, forecasting trends, a world of logic and predictable outcomes, a world I'd painstakingly built for myself. I am Ava Jenkins, 34, senior analyst at one of the city's top investment firms, thrived in this environment. It was a far cry from the chaotic, uncertain world I'd grown up in, a world I had worked tirelessly to escape. An incoming call from an unfamiliar number broke my concentration. I hesitated, usually letting unknown calls go to voicemail, but something prompted me to answer. Ava Jenkins speaking. Miss Jenkins, a voice said, crisp and professional. This is Emily from Pacific Reserve Bank. I'm calling regarding the overdue payments on the loan secured by your property at 412 Whispering Pines. My hand froze over the keyboard. Whispering Pines, my cabin. My little A-frame nestled high in the Rockies, surrounded by pine trees and quiet solitude. It was my escape, my reward, the physical embodiment of my hard-won independence. I think there's been a mistake, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't have any loans with Pacific Reserve and the cabin. It's paid for, fully. I drained a significant portion of my savings last year to buy it outright, avoiding the very debt that woman was talking about. Our records indicate a loan was originated 3 months ago, collateralized by that address, Emily repeated, her tone unwavering. The account is currently $15,000 overdue. A cold dread began to snake its way up my spine. That's impossible, I insisted, my heart starting to beat faster. I own that property free and clear. I have the deed. Papers rustled on her end of the line. I have the loan documentation here, Miss Jenkins. The loan is for $600,000. Your signature appears on the agreement, with Robert and Carol Jenkins listed as co-borrowers. Robert and Carol Jenkins, my parents, the names hit me like a physical blow. My father, Robert, the charming salesman, always with a big idea and a reason why things hadn't quite panned out yet. My mother, Carol, the queen of appearances, meticulously crafting an image of suburban success and effortless grace. And now, this. My parents, I stammered, the word catching in my throat. Yes, they are listed as co-borrowers, Emily confirmed. According to the documents, the loan was intended for renovations and maintenance. Renovations? Maintenance? The cabin was in perfect condition, and $600,000, that was more than I had even paid for it. My mind reeled. How? Why? My parents had always been. Opportunistic, certainly. But this felt like something else entirely. Send me copies of everything, I said, my voice regaining some of its professional steel, fueled now by a growing anger. Immediately, email them to the address I give you. I will need to review this with my attorney. I dictated my email address, my hand shaking slightly as I scribbled it down. The moment I hung up, I was on the phone with Sarah, my best friend since freshman year of college, now a sharp, no-nonsense corporate lawyer. Sarah, I need you, now. I quickly explained the call, the impossible loan, my parents' names on the documents. Check your email. I just forwarded you something from Pacific Reserve Bank. Please tell me it's a scam. Tell me it's not real. While Sarah accessed the files, I frantically navigated to the county assessor's website. My property records confirmed the deed was still solely in my name. No liens, no outstanding mortgages listed under my name. Yet the bank had the documents. My stomach twisted. I dug deeper into my own banking apps, scanning recent transactions, searching for any sign of large deposits or withdrawals I didn't recognize. Nothing obvious. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming text. My father's name appeared on the screen. Ava, your mother and I are hosting a small, casual dinner tonight, around 7 p.m. Just family. Important family matter to discuss. A second text followed almost instantly. Also, bring the cabin keys. Thought we'd drive up this weekend, check on that old water heater in the basement. Been meaning to. My blood ran cold, then boiled. The casual tone, the transparent lie about the water heater, they knew I hadn't seen any notices from the bank. This dinner, the request for keys, it was all part of it. They must think I was still completely in the dark about the loan. The audaciousness of it was breathtaking. Sarah called back, her voice was grave. Ava, I'm looking at the documents. There, incredibly well done, professional-grade forgery. My heart sank. Forgery. Yes, your signature. It's a very convincing imitation. And the notary stamp, she paused, it belongs to David Miller. Attorney David Miller. The name sent another wave of unease through me. He wasn't just a notary. He was an old family friend, the man who had handled my grandmother Irene's estate after she passed away. He'd been at countless family gatherings, always with a booming laugh, a friendly pat on the back, and a willingness to offer helpful legal advice. He was supposed to be one of the good guys. David Miller, I repeated, the pieces clicking together with sickening precision. He was involved. His stamp is on the document, certifying he witnessed the signing, Sarah confirmed. Either he's complicit or someone is using his identity. Given he's a family friend, I'd lean towards the former. They must have convinced him or perhaps coerced him. My mind raced. Why would they do this? The financial pressures my parents always seemed to be under were a constant undercurrent of my childhood. Failed business ventures, speculative investments that never paid off, a lifestyle they struggled to maintain. But forging my name, using my property, this was a whole new level. Okay, listen to me, Ava. Sarah's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts, firm and strategic. Go to that dinner, act normal. Don't let them see that you know anything about the loan or the forgery. We need to play along, see what their angle is. Find out exactly how deep this goes before we make our move. We need more information. I took a deep, shaky breath. Okay, I agreed, the word feeling small and inadequate. I'll go. Good girl, Sarah said. Now get ready and Ava, be careful. The next hour was a blur. I mechanically went through the motions of getting ready, my mind a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and hurt. The image of my peaceful mountain cabin, my sanctuary, was now tainted, a potential battleground in a war I hadn't known I was fighting. My mother's texts continued to arrive. Don't be late, sweetheart, just family. Mark and Chloe will be here. Chloe, my younger sister, and her boyfriend, Mark. Was Chloe involved? Did she know? Mark was a real estate agent. He'd been pressuring me recently about getting the cabin appraised, talking about how hot the mountain property market was. At the time, I'd brushed it off. Now, it felt sinister. At 6:55 p.m., I pulled into my parents' familiar, perfectly manicured suburban driveway. A sleek, dark luxury SUV I'd never seen before sat parked proudly under the porch light. It looked brand new, expensive. They could afford that, but they needed a $600,000 loan secured by my property. The anger that had been simmering all afternoon solidified into a cold, hard resolve. My mother opened the door before I could even knock, her face wreathed in a wide, welcoming smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Darling, you're here. She embraced me, a quick, air-kissing maneuver. You look a little pale, dear. Still working those crazy hours at the firm. You know how it is, Mom, I replied, forcing a smile that felt brittle and unconvincing. The house smelled of my mother's famous lasagna, rich tomato sauce and melted cheese, mingled with the faint, cloying scent of her expensive perfume. It was the smell of my childhood, the smell of carefully maintained appearances. Through the archway into the living room, I saw Chloe and Mark seated on the plush sofa, talking quietly. Chloe glanced up, offering a small, tight smile that didn't quite meet her eyes either. Mark gave a quick, awkward nod. The atmosphere felt charged, tense beneath the surface of normalcy. My father emerged from his study, that familiar, confident stride, the booming voice that could fill a room. Ah, my smart girl, just in time. He held out his arms for a hug. Brought the cabin keys. My hand instinctively went to my purse, my fingers closing around the cool metal of the spare keys I kept for emergencies. The keys he wanted so badly, to the property they had used, had potentially mortgaged, behind my back. Of course, Dad, I said, keeping my voice light, almost cheerful. Right here. His eyes, though smiling, held a brief, calculating spark as he reached out, and in that fleeting moment, the full weight of it crashed down on me. Not just this specific betrayal, but the pattern that stretched back years. The casual disregard for my boundaries, the subtle pressures, the way my hard-earned financial success was always viewed as a family resource to be tapped, rather than my own achievement. This wasn't just about a $600,000 loan. It was about a lifetime of entitlement, of viewing me as an extension of themselves. someone whose assets were theirs for the taking. It felt like they had tried to steal not just my cabin, but my very independence. The $750,000 representing the full scope of their potential deceit, including the value of the loan and the estimated amount of money I would later discover they had skimmed from my accounts over the years. I pulled the keys back slightly, just out of his reach, still smiling. "But first," I said, my voice dropping slightly, the smile feeling like a mask, "why don't you tell me about this issue with the water heater? Anything serious I should know about?" His hand dropped back to his side, the calculating spark in his eyes replaced by a brief flicker of surprise, quickly masked by a smooth facade. "Oh, just a minor checkup," my father said, waving a dismissive hand. "Preventative maintenance, you know how mountain properties are, always something needing attention. Nothing for you to worry your pretty head about." The casual dismissal, the assumption that I, the meticulous analyst, wouldn't care about a potential issue with my property, only fueled my anger. We moved into the living room. Chloe offered that same tight smile, Mark still avoiding eye contact. The tension in the air was thick, a physical weight pressing down on me. "So?" I said, taking my usual seat on the sofa, crossing my legs, trying to project an air of relaxed curiosity. "What's this important family matter we needed to discuss tonight?" My parents exchanged a quick, meaningful glance. My mother smoothed her skirt, her movements a fraction too precise. Chloe suddenly found the intricate pattern on the Persian rug endlessly fascinating. My father cleared his throat, adopting that smooth, persuasive tone he reserved for important business calls, the one that always put me on edge. "Well, sweetheart, your mother and I have been thinking it's time to make a change. Scale back a little." "Scaling back?" I asked, serving myself some lasagna, carefully keeping my voice neutral. "That sounds nice. Planning to travel more. Finally take that cruise you always talked about, Mom." My mother sat down primly on an armchair opposite me. "We've had some unexpected financial difficulties recently. Some investments haven't performed quite as expected." "Investments?" I asked, allowing a touch of innocent confusion into my voice, looking directly at my father. "Or are we talking about those large sums I heard about from your poker group, Dad? The ones you were so sure were a guaranteed return last month?" A tense silence descended, broken only by the faint clinking sound as Mark put his wine glass down on the coffee table a little too hard. My father's face tightened, a muscle jumping in his jaw, but he held his composure, his salesman training kicking in. "Now, Ava, that's a bit unfair. We've encountered some challenging circumstances, yes, but we've always managed our affairs." "Managed?" I repeated softly, deliberately drawing out the word, my gaze unwavering. "Like managing to take out a $600,000 loan against my cabin without telling me." The carefully constructed facade shattered. My father's charm vanished in an instant, replaced by something cold and sharp. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes wide and filled with a mixture of shock and, was that guilt? "Who have you been talking to?" my father demanded, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Pacific Reserve Bank," I replied calmly, my voice steady despite the tremor that had started deep in my core. "They called today about the delinquent payments." It was a very informative conversation. I turned my gaze to Mark, who was now staring fixedly at his hands, his face pale. "Did you know about this, Mark? Is this why you were so enthusiastic about getting the cabin appraised last month, pushing me to list it?" He flinched, running a hand through his hair nervously. "Avarai, it's complicated." "It's not complicated at all, Mark," I said, turning back to my parents. "It's fraud, it's forgery, and it's theft." "It's not theft," my mother shrieked, her voice rising sharply. "You owe us this, Ava. After everything we've done for you, all the sacrifices we made. Putting you through that expensive college, helping you get your start in the city, supporting you." Sacrifices. I felt a wave of bitter, incredulous amusement wash over me. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. The scrape of my chair against the wooden floor seemed deafening in the tense silence that followed. "Like the college fund Grandma Irene set up specifically for me, the one you mysteriously lost in a bad investment?" I looked at Chloe, whose eyes were fixed on me, mirroring my own shock from the day before. "Or perhaps you mean the credit cards you opened in my name the day I turned 18, maxing them out and ruining my credit before I even knew they existed." Chloe gasped again, a small choked sound. "They did what?" "Oh, you didn't know?" I asked her, my voice laced with a pain that went back 15 years. I found out the hard way when I applied for my first apartment after graduation and got denied because my credit score was in the basement. The rental agent actually laughed at me. It took me years of careful saving, meticulous budgeting, and a massive amount of stress to dig myself out of the financial hole they put me in. That was different, my father protested, his voice strained and defensive. We were struggling back then. We always intended to pay those off. Things were tough. And now you're trying to steal my cabin, I finished, walking slowly towards the coffee table towards them. Trying to steal the one thing I worked for, the one place that is truly mine, free and clear. I looked at my father, then my mother. Tell me, did Attorney Miller help you forge the loan documents this time, or did you find a new professional willing to risk disbarment and prison? My father's face went deathly pale at the mention of David Miller. Leave David out of this, he choked out. Why? I challenged, my voice rising slightly, shedding the last vestiges of my forced calm. Is he just as worried about facing fraud charges as you are? My mother sprang to her feet, her face contorted with fury, knocking her wine glass over with a clatter. Red liquid spread across the expensive rug like a stain. How dare you? How dare you accuse us? How dare you threaten your own parents after everything we've done for you? Stop saying that. I slammed my hand down on the coffee table, making everyone jump. The solid wood vibrated. You didn't sacrifice anything for me. You always took. My college fund, my credit, the peace of mind Grandma Irene wanted me to have. And now you've gone too far. You tried to steal the one place I built for myself. I pulled out my phone, navigating to the email from Emily at Pacific Reserve, holding the screen up for them to see. You have 24 hours. You call Pacific Reserve Bank, you call Attorney Miller, and you come clean about the forgery, the fraudulent loan, everything. You start making this right. My mother's face went paper-white, her eyes wide with terror. You wouldn't. We're family. Family doesn't steal from family, Chloe said, her voice quiet but firm, surprising us all. And you be quiet, Chloe, my mother shrieked, spinning on her. You ungrateful little. No, I interrupted, cutting her off sharply, stepping between my mother and Chloe. She gets to speak now, we both do. For once in your lives, you are going to listen. The silence that followed was absolute. My father slowly sank back into his armchair, his shoulders slumping, suddenly looking much older and defeated. My mother stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. What? What do you want? My father asked, his voice barely a whisper. I want you to confess, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. To Pacific Reserve, to the city planning department, because I know you also tried to manipulate property lines with forged documents. Inspector Davis already called me, to Attorney Miller, to everyone you've lied to and cheated. You confess fully and truthfully. I leaned forward slightly, or I will do it for you. You'll ruin us, my mother whispered, the fury draining away, replaced by fear. You did that yourselves, I said, standing up straight. I walked to the dining room table, picked up a linen napkin, and deliberately dropped it onto the table. You have until noon tomorrow. Call Miller, confess to the bank, and start making amends. After that, I paused, letting the threat hang heavy in the air. Everything goes public. Every single lie, every single betrayal, every single theft. The press will have a field day. And if we refuse, my father challenged, though the defiance was weak, his eyes hollow. Then, I said, walking towards the front door, Chloe stepping up to walk beside me, shoulder to shoulder, I have a meeting scheduled with a journalist friend of Sarah's. She's doing a major exposé on financial exploitation within families. I imagine the headlines would be quite illuminating. Prominent local couple accused of defrauding own daughters, stealing $750,000 cabin. As I reached the threshold, I paused, turning back one last time, looking at my parents, at the ruined rug, at the palpable tension in the room. Oh, and Mom, I said, my voice dropping to a conversational tone. The lasagna was a little dry tonight, just like always. I walked out the door, pulling it firmly shut behind me. Outside, Chloe grabbed my arm as we reached my car. Ava, did you see their faces? Do you think they'll actually do it? They'll try to find a way out first, I said, unlocking the car door. They'll call Miller, they'll try to bribe someone, they'll try to talk their way out of it like they always do, but they're running out of options. My phone buzzed in my hand, a text from Inspector Davis. Documents filed. Zoning review officially initiated. Delay pending investigation. I showed the message to Chloe. The net is closing, Chloe. They just don't know how tight it is yet. What if they try to run? She asked, her voice laced with fear. They won't, I said, starting the engine. They care too much about their reputation, their standing in the community, their country club memberships. And tomorrow morning, when that noon deadline hits, that's exactly what I'm going to threaten them with. As I pulled away from their perfectly manicured driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror. I could see my parents through the dining room window, heads close together, gesturing frantically. They still thought they could control the narrative, talk their way out of trouble. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, the air in Sarah's office felt charged with anticipation. Documents were spread across her large desk: bank statements, property deeds, scanned loan papers, emails, copies of articles on financial fraud. The undeniable, damning paper trail of my parents' deceit, meticulously gathered. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a highlighted section on a faded document. "Your grandmother Irene's trust. It specifically stated that the mountain property, your cabin, could not be used as collateral for any personal loan without the express written consent of the trustee, which was David Miller. These loan documents, they are completely invalid according to the terms of the trust." I leaned closer, my heart aching slightly at the sight of my grandmother's neat signature. She had loved that cabin, had envisioned it as a place of peace and family gathering. She had tried to protect it and me, so how did they get around that? "They didn't, not legally," Sarah replied, sorting through another stack of papers. "It looks like Miller, under their direction, backdated documents claiming the trust was dissolved last year. But I have the original trust papers right here, filed correctly with the state. Still active, still legally binding, still protecting the property." My phone buzzed again, my father's name flashed on the screen, still ignoring him. The noon deadline was fast approaching. "There's more," Sarah continued, pulling up a spreadsheet on her computer. "I had my assistant dig deeper into all of your accounts, going back several years." The screen displayed a long list of small, recurring withdrawals, ranging from a few hundred to a couple $1,000s, scattered across different accounts, totaling a significant amount over time. "They've been skimming," I said, the nausea returning. "This whole time. Not just the big loan, but taking little bits here and there, hoping I wouldn't notice." A soft knock on the door interrupted us. Chloe stood there, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her, clutching her purse tightly. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I nodded, and she slipped inside, closing the door behind her. I need to tell you everything," she said, her gaze fixed on her hands, twisting the strap of her purse. "About Mom and Dad, about Mark." "Let me guess," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. "You knew about the loans." She flinched, her shoulders tightening. Not exactly. I knew they were planning something with the cabin. They kept pushing about needing access, talking about needing to free up capital for this incredible investment opportunity Dad had found. They talked about the cabin constantly. I told them I thought they were going too far, that you loved that place, but her voice trailed off, thick with emotion. "But what, Chloe?" I prompted softly. She finally looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a mixture of shame and pain. "Mom, she kept telling me that you owed them, that you'd gotten everything, the good job, the success, the freedom to live how you wanted the cabin. And that I'd gotten nothing. She said you were selfish, that it was your turn to contribute to the family." Tears began to stream down her cheeks. "I was jealous, Ava, okay. I was so jealous of you with your seemingly perfect life and your beautiful cabin where you could just escape whenever you wanted, whenever things got too much here. They made me resent you." "Working out?" I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Do you remember that tiny, awful basement apartment I had freshman year? The one with the leaky pipes, the mice in the walls, the landlord who never fixed anything. Do you remember why I had to work 3 jobs, 20-30 hours a week on top of a full course load, just to afford that tiny, miserable room? They said you just weren't good with money," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "That you were irresponsible." "No," I said, my voice shaking slightly as I reached for the old credit report Sarah had printed out. "It was because they opened credit cards in my name the day I turned 18, forged my signature, and maxed them out within months." I slid the documents towards her. See these, opened when I was legally an adult. 5 different cards, all maxed out, all defaulted within a year. The calls from collectors started before I even finished my first semester. It took me years of careful saving, living on ramen and instant coffee, budgeting every single dollar, and a massive amount of stress and effort to dig myself out of the financial hole they put me in. My credit score was in the 30-somethings. Chloe stared at the reports, her face blanching. I had no idea. They told me. They told me you were just bad with money, that you spent recklessly. That's what they wanted you to believe, I said, my voice heavy with years of unaddressed pain. There's more, Sarah interjected gently, sliding a faded bank statement across the desk. Remember those savings bonds Grandma Irene set up for both of you for college? She gave them to Miller to hold, with instructions to release them when you started university. Mine disappeared, Chloe said, her voice flat. Mom said the bank lost them. Said the paperwork got messed up. No, I said softly, looking at the dates on the statement. They cashed them, both sets, yours and mine. Look at the dates. This was right before your first semester. Chloe's hands shook as she picked up the document. This was when they told me they couldn't afford my tuition, that I had to take out student loans because their investments hadn't paid off. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. While they were gambling away our college funds, they made me take out loans. I've been so awful to you, Ava, this whole time. I thought what they wanted me to think. They played us against each other. I reached out and put a hand on her arm. They did, but it wasn't your fault, Chloe. They're professionals at this kind of manipulation. What are you going to do now? She asked, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. First, Sarah said, gathering the documents into neat, organized piles, we're filing formal fraud charges with Pacific Reserve based on the forged loan documents. We have Miller's preliminary confession. We have your grandmother's trust documents proving the loan is invalid. Just as she finished speaking, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, Miss Jenkins? A formal voice asked. This is Inspector Davis from the City Planning Department. I'm calling regarding the property boundary adjustments that were submitted for your address at Whispering Pines. We've encountered some discrepancies. What kind of discrepancies, Inspector? I asked, meeting Sarah's gaze. Well, the dates on the revised survey maps don't align with the historical zoning records, he explained. There are also some irregularities regarding the associated permits. Technically, this constitutes a significant irregularity that will require a full review by the department. Any pending actions related to the property, such as a sale or transfer, would be paused indefinitely during this investigation. I caught Sarah's eye again. A slow smile spread across her face. How long a delay are we talking about, Inspector Davis? She asked. Could be months, potentially longer, he said. These things require a thorough investigation, especially when historical records conflict with new filings. After I hung up, Chloe looked at us, bewildered. What does that mean, boundary adjustments, zoning? It means, Sarah said, the smile reaching her eyes, that we have time. Your parents were trying to manipulate the property lines, probably to increase the perceived value for a quick sale, using more forged documents. But now, the city planning department has flagged the cabin. They can't sell it, they can't transfer it, they can't do anything with it while this investigation is pending. And while they're distracted by that and the bank fraud investigation, I added, feeling a surge of adrenaline, we can start digging into everything else. Miller's full confession, the gambling debts, tracking where that skimmed money went. I want to help, Ava, Chloe said suddenly, her voice firm, surprising me with its conviction. I know things. About their friends, their routines, where they stash things. I know about the shell corporation Dad set up last year, the one he wouldn't talk about. I studied my sister's face, seeing not just remorse, but a newfound strength. A steely determination I hadn't realized she possessed. Are you sure, Chloe? They're still our parents. They stole my future, she said, her gaze unwavering. They made me doubt myself, made me think I wasn't good enough, made me believe I owed them because they sacrificed so much while hiding the fact that they stole from me. And they tried to steal your cabin, your peace. I want to make this right. I want to expose them. Sarah began organizing the piles of documents on her desk, her movements efficient and purposeful. We'll need to move carefully. One wrong step, one leaked piece of information, and they might realize just how much we know, how close the net is closing. They won't, I said, thinking of my father's arrogant confidence at dinner, my mother's unwavering belief in her own ability to manipulate any situation. They still think they're in control. They still think they're smarter than us. So, what's the plan? Chloe asked, leaning forward, eager. I picked up the original trust documents, running my finger over Grandma Irene's familiar, elegant signature. Next, I said, looking at both Sarah and Chloe, my voice filled with a quiet resolve. We pull every single thread. We connect every dot. And we don't stop until their whole carefully constructed world unravels completely. The next family dinner invitation arrived via text message. To clear the air, darling, my mother's text read, followed by several heart emojis. I accepted immediately. It was the perfect opportunity to set the final stage of the trap. I arrived early, walking into the familiar house that now felt alien and hostile. My mother was in the kitchen, bustling about, a picture of domestic tranquility, as if the tense confrontation the previous night had never happened. She was making her famous lasagna, the scent thick and comforting, a deliberate attempt to recreate a sense of normalcy. The bank called again today, I mentioned casually, helping her carry plates to the dining room. Her hands stilled for a fraction of a second as she placed a stack of dishes on the table. Pacific Reserve. They said they're in the middle of a major internal audit right now. Something about irregular loan applications and potential forgery across multiple accounts. I kept my voice light, conversational, observing her carefully. Inspector Davis also called. Apparently, the city planning department is looking into property filings in the mountain area. They've flagged a few properties for review due to discrepancies. A serving spoon clattered from her hand onto the counter. I'm sure that has nothing to do with us, she stammered, her voice a little too high, a flush creeping up her neck. Of course not, I smiled, though I knew the smile didn't reach my eyes. But it is quite a coincidence, isn't it? And Attorney Miller seemed quite concerned when I spoke to him this morning. Said he's been getting a lot of uncomfortable questions from the bank and the city planners. Before she could formulate a response, the doorbell rang. Chloe arrived with Mark, followed shortly by our father. The air in the house was thick with unspoken tension, a suffocating cloak of unease beneath the forced politeness. "How's the cabin holding up, Ava?" my father asked, attempting a casual tone as he poured himself a drink, his eyes flickering towards me. "Secure," I replied, meeting his gaze directly, holding it for a beat longer than necessary. "Very secure." Dinner began quietly, punctuated by the clinking of silverware and my mother's increasingly strained attempts at small talk about neighbors and the weather. I ate slowly, observing them, feeling a strange sense of detachment. I waited until everyone had their wine glasses filled, until the silence stretched almost to breaking point, before speaking. "I had a rather informative morning," I announced, my voice clear and calm in the quiet room. After Pacific Reserve and city planning called again, I decided to follow up. My father's fork paused halfway to his mouth, a piece of lasagna suspended in midair. "I met with Detective Adams from the Financial Crimes Unit this morning." My mother gasped audibly. My father slowly lowered his fork, his face draining of color. "They're launching a full-scale investigation," I continued, taking a slow, deliberate sip of my wine, watching their reactions. "Based on the evidence provided by Pacific Reserve, the city planning department, and Attorney Miller." "Miller," my father choked out. "What did Miller say?" "He's fully cooperating," I said, my voice still calm. "He's provided a sworn statement detailing his involvement with the forged loan documents, the backdated trust papers, and the instructions he received. He's also implicated others who may have assisted." I looked pointedly at Mark, who visibly paled and started to fidget. Ava," my father stammered, correcting himself, his eyes darting around the table. "You're making a terrible mistake. This is a family matter. We can work this out privately. We don't need police involved." "Privately?" I challenged, my voice rising slightly. "Like you worked out Grandma Irene's trust, Robert, or the money you stole from Chloe's savings bonds, or the mountain of debt you put in my name when I was a teenager?" I looked at Chloe, whose eyes were fixed on Mark, then back at my parents. "The time for privacy is over. You chose to involve innocent people like Attorney Miller and Inspector Davis, and even Mark here in your schemes. You chose to involve the bank and the city. Now, the authorities are involved. You had no right to talk to Miller, my mother shrieked, her voice shrill. Like you had no right to forge my signature and attempt to steal my cabin, I retorted, my voice gaining strength. Like you had no right to steal my future. I pulled out my phone again, the screen glowing in the dim light of the dining room. Everything is documented, I said, my voice flat and final. Every single lie, every single fraudulent transaction, every single betrayal stretching back decades. Detective Adams has it all. He has Attorney Miller's statement. He has the bank records. He has the forged documents. He has evidence of the skimming from my accounts. He has the city planning discrepancies. He has the beginning of statements from other victims who have now come forward. I looked from my father to my mother, letting my gaze linger. One call, right now, and all of this goes public. Not just the police and the banks, but the press. Your names, your faces, your community standing. All of it gone. My mother's face was a mask of terror, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. You wouldn't, please, Ava. We're family, we can fix this. Family doesn't steal from family, Chloe said firmly, her voice stronger than I had ever heard it, looking directly at her mother. And you be quiet, Chloe, my mother shrieked, her eyes flashing with fury at my sister. You ungrateful little. No, I interrupted, my voice ringing with authority that surprised even myself. She gets to speak now, we both do. For once in your lives, you are going to listen to the truth, whether you like it or not. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the weight of years of unspoken pain and resentment. My father slowly sank back into his chair, his face ashen, defeat etched into every line. My mother stared at me, breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling rapidly. What? What do you want now? My father asked, his voice barely a whisper, stripped of all its usual bluster. I want you to call Detective Adams right now, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. And I want you to confess, fully and truthfully, to everything. The loan forgery, the skimming, the trust documents, the property line manipulation, the credit cards in my name, the savings bonds you stole from Chloe and me. Everything. You'll ruin us completely, my mother whimpered, tears finally beginning to stream down her face, smudging her carefully applied makeup. You did that to yourselves, Mom, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I stood up, pushing away from the table, the lasagna forgotten. The phone is right there. You have 10 minutes. If I don't see you call Detective Adams and start confessing, I make the call. And trust me, the press will be far less sympathetic than the police. I walked towards the front door, Chloe right beside me. At the threshold, I paused, turning back to look at them one last time. They sat at the table, frozen, staring at the phone, at each other, their faces a mixture of fear and disbelief. Oh, and Dad, I added, my voice cold. That new SUV in the driveway, you might want to enjoy the ride home tonight. Detective Adams mentioned asset forfeiture. I walked out and closed the door softly behind me. Outside, the air was cool and crisp. Chloe grabbed my arm, her hand trembling slightly. Do you think they'll do it? They'll try to find a way out, I said, unlocking my car. They always do, but they're trapped now, Chloe. The bank, the city, Miller, other victims. The evidence is overwhelming. And now they know I'm not backing down. Their reputation is on the line. My phone buzzed in my hand, not a text from them. A text from Inspector Davis, update, documents filed. Property flagged for comprehensive historical review. Sale transfer blocked indefinitely. I showed it to Chloe. The net is tightened, Chloe. All we have to do now is wait for them to walk into it. What if they just disappear? She asked, her voice still holding a tremor of fear. They won't, I said, starting the engine. They're narcissists, Chloe. They crave attention, validation, respectability. The idea of losing all of that, of being publicly shamed, is worse than prison to them. They'll try to control the damage, and that means confessing to the police, hoping for a plea deal, trying to manage the fallout. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house was dark, silent. They were inside, making their choice. The game was finally over. The morning dawned bright and clear. Instead of heading to the office, I met Sarah and Chloe at a quiet coffee shop near the courthouse. My phone had been buzzing since early morning with calls from unknown numbers, voicemails filled with pleas and accusations from my parents. I ignored them all. Detective Adams called, Sarah said, taking a sip of her coffee. Your father contacted him last night, started confessing. Miller's statement, combined with the evidence we've gathered, is compelling. They executed the search warrant this morning. A search warrant? Chloe asked, looking nervous. Yes, I said, feeling a strange sense of calm. They'll be looking for evidence, financial records, gambling debt records, potentially more forged documents, anything related to the skimming or other victims. Just as we finished our coffee, my phone rang. It was Detective Adams. Miss Jenkins, we're currently on site at your parents' residence, he said. We've found substantial evidence correlating with the information you and Attorney Miller provided. We'd like you to come down to the station this morning to make a formal statement detailing your experiences. I looked at Sarah, who nodded. We'll be there within the hour, Detective. The drive to the police station was quiet, filled with a mixture of anticipation and a lingering sadness. Texts flooded my phone friends, extended family, even acquaintances from my parents' country club and my mother's volunteer groups, all asking if the article that had hit the morning papers detailing a major familial financial fraud scheme was about my parents. At the station, Detective Adams led us to a small interview room. Attorney Miller has already given his formal statement, he said, sliding a printed document across the table. Signed a full confession this morning, detailing the coercion and threats he faced from your father, as well as his reluctant participation. He's cooperating fully. What about my parents? I asked, my voice tight. They're being processed now, he said, his expression grim. Miss Jenkins, you should be prepared. They're not taking this well. Just then, a voice crackled over the police radio, loud enough for us to hear from the hallway outside the room. Detective Adams, subjects are attempting to destroy documents in the study, requesting backup. Detective Adams stood up quickly. Excuse me, he said, heading towards the door. Please wait here. I'll be right back. Sarah squeezed my hand. Are you okay? Before I could answer, the door burst open. My father stood there, his face contorted with fury, two uniformed officers struggling to restrain him. You ungrateful little. You did this to your own parents. Sir, step back, one of the officers ordered, pulling him back. She's lying, he roared, thrashing against their grip. Everything we did was for her. For the family. My mother appeared in the doorway next, her face eerily calm, but her eyes burning with a cold, hard fury. We raised you better than this, Ava, she said, her voice low and dripping with contempt. After everything we sacrificed for you. You mean after everything you stole? I stood up, facing her, the years of pain and anger finally finding their voice. The trust fund Grandma Irene left me. The credit cards you opened in my name and maxed out. The $600,000 fraudulent loan on my cabin. The years of skimming from my accounts. We deserved that money, she shrieked, her composure finally breaking, revealing the raw entitlement beneath. Who do you think you are to do this to us? I'm the daughter you tried to rob, I stated, my voice clear and strong. I walked forward and placed the stack of documents I had brought, the ones Sarah had helped me compile, onto the table. And here is every illegal, unethical, and manipulative thing you've done to me since I turned 18. Documented, witnessed, and ready for the prosecutor. This is the evidence of your crimes. The color drained from her face. Behind her, Chloe appeared in the doorway, looking shaken but standing tall. Mom, she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. They found the other forged documents in your jewelry box, the ones for the property line changes, and Grandma's checkbook with the practice signatures. Our mother spun around, her eyes wide with disbelief and rage at Chloe. You helped them search. You betrayed us too. No, Mom, Chloe said, her voice firm despite the tears in her eyes. You betrayed us, both of us, for years. Detective Adams returned with more officers. Robert and Carol Jenkins, you are under arrest for multiple counts of fraud, forgery, financial exploitation, and conspiracy. They moved forward, placing handcuffs on my parents. This isn't over, Ava, my mother hissed, her eyes fixed on me as they led her away. Family doesn't do this to family. Exactly, I called after her, my voice ringing down the hallway. Remember that the next time you think about stealing from your children. The police station buzzed with activity as officers processed my parents. Through a window, I could see reporters beginning to gather outside, cameras flashing. The story was breaking wide open, the quiet scandal of my family now public. Chloe slumped into a chair beside me, exhaling slowly. They found everything, she whispered. The gambling receipts, fake loan applications, even Grandma Irene's old checkbook with practice copies of her signature. It was all hidden. "Are you okay, Chloe?" I asked, reaching out and taking her hand. She gave a hollow, weary laugh. "No, but we will be." She pulled out her phone. "Look at this. Attorney Miller has already been formally disbarred. It's all over the legal websites already." Sarah returned from talking with the prosecutor. They're charging them with multiple felony counts. Given the overwhelming evidence, Attorney Miller's cooperation, and the statements from other victims who are now coming forward, they're looking at significant prison time. The scale of the fraud, including the $600,000 loan and the estimated $150,000 skimmed over the years, puts the total near $750,000. It's a devastating case. "Good," I said, standing up, the weight of years of resentment beginning to lift. "Let's go home." Outside, reporters swarmed us, shouting questions, cameras flashing. I ignored them all, walking straight to my car with Sarah and Chloe by my side. As we drove away, I glanced back at the station. Through the windows, I could see my parents being processed. My father's shoulders were slumped in utter defeat. My mother's face was a mask of cold, hard fury, still radiating resentment even in handcuffs. "They're saying Dad had some pretty serious gambling debts with some dangerous people," Chloe said quietly from the backseat. "That's why they were so desperate for the cabin money, why they were willing to do anything." "They'll have plenty of time to think about their choices now," I replied, my voice flat. My phone buzzed with a text from Inspector Davis. "Update. Zoning review terminated. Property claims officially cleared. Your cabin is safe. Congratulations, Miss Jenkins." Later that evening, standing on the small, familiar porch of my mountain cabin, I watched the sunset over the quiet, peaceful peaks. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth. My parents had tried to take this place from me, this one spot where I felt truly at peace, truly myself. They had tried to steal my sanctuary, my independence, my future. Instead, they had lost everything that mattered to them: their reputation, their freedom, the carefully constructed facade of respectability they'd maintained for so long. Chloe joined me on the porch, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "To karma," she said, her voice soft. "To consequences," I replied, clinking my glass against hers. The wind whispered through the pine trees, a gentle, cleansing sound. It felt like the air itself was lighter, finally free from the heavy weight of my parents' deceit and expectation. Release and reflection. The verdict came down on a crisp autumn morning. I sat in the courtroom, Chloe's hand gripping mine tightly, a silent show of solidarity as the judge addressed my parents. "Robert and Carol Jenkins," she began, her voice firm and devoid of emotion. "The evidence presented in this case reveals a disturbing and long-standing pattern of exploitation and betrayal, not only of your own children, who you subjected to financial ruin and emotional manipulation for years, but of numerous members of this community who trusted you, who considered you friends, who you defrauded through schemes and deceit." My mother stood rigid, her prison jumpsuit a stark contrast to the designer clothes she once favored. Her face was pale, etched with a defiant bitterness. My father seemed to have physically shrunk since his arrest, his shoulders permanently slumped, his gaze fixed on the floor. "In light of the overwhelming evidence, the severity and duration of your crimes, and the significant financial and emotional damage inflicted upon your numerous victims," the judge continued, her gaze sweeping across the courtroom, "this court sentences you, Robert and Carol Jenkins, to 10 years in state prison, followed by 7 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to all identified victims, totaling $750,000. The gavel struck the bench with a resounding, final sound. It was done. Outside the courthouse, the media crowd was even larger than before. Sarah handed me a thick envelope. "The last of the restitution paperwork," she said. "Every victim we could identify and verify has been contacted. Every stolen dollar accounted for, as much as possible." "Including Grandma Irene's trust?" Chloe asked, her voice quiet. "Especially that," Sarah smiled gently. "The trustees, based on the revealed circumstances, and your grandmother's original intentions for the funds to benefit her granddaughters, voted to redistribute the remaining funds equally between you two. It's a significant amount, Ava, Chloe. Enough to give you both a fresh start, just as she intended. My phone buzzed. A text from Inspector Davis. Attorney Miller just finished his community service presentation at the local senior center, a workshop on identifying financial fraud scams targeting the elderly. Apparently, he was quite effective. A reporter, a young woman with bright, earnest eyes, approached me, microphone extended. "Miss Jenkins, any comment on the sentencing? How does it feel to see your own parents sentenced to prison?" I faced the camera, taking a deep breath, feeling a profound sense of quiet strength and liberation wash over me. "Just this," I said, my voice clear and steady. "Trust is a privilege, not a right. It must be earned through honesty and integrity. And true family doesn't exploit or destroy. They build each other up, they support, they cherish. My hope is that by speaking out, others who are being exploited by those they should be able to trust will find the courage to seek help and break the cycle." Back at the mountain cabin, Chloe and I walked along the winding forest path that led to a high overlook, a place where the world seemed to stretch out endlessly below. From here, we could see the distant peaks where my parents had once dreamed of building a lavish retirement home, a monument to their ill-gotten gains. "Did you see Mom's face?" Chloe asked, her voice still holding a tremor of sadness, when they read the victim impact statements, especially Susan's. It was like she finally heard what she'd done, truly heard it for the first time. "The truth is rarely comfortable," I said, bending down and picking up a smooth, gray stone, turning it over in my fingers. "But it is always necessary for healing. For closure." My phone rang, Detective Adams updating me on the ongoing investigations, more victims coming forward, more charges being filed against co-conspirators. The web of deception my parents had spun was still unraveling, impacting lives beyond just ours. "They'll never really stop, will they?" Chloe said after I hung up, a weary resignation in her voice. "Even in prison, they'll probably try to run some kind of scam, con the other inmates." "Maybe," I conceded, "but they can't hurt us anymore, not like they used to. Their power over us is gone." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small, heavy object I carried. The set of original cabin keys, the ones my father had demanded that night. "What are you going to do with them?" Chloe asked. I walked to the edge of the overlook, looking out at the vast expanse of forest and sky, the setting sun painting the clouds in fiery hues. "Something I should have done a long time ago," I said. I threw the keys as hard as I could. They arced through the air, glinting in the last rays of sunlight, before disappearing into the thick woods below, lost forever among the trees and the rocks. Symbolic, perhaps a theatrical gesture, but it felt like a physical release, severing a final, tangible link to their deceit. Back at the cabin, Sarah waited on the porch with more papers. "The trust is officially reformed, distributed. The restitution payments have begun. Everything is moving forward." She looked at both of us, her expression warm and proud. "Your grandmother Irene would be incredibly proud of both of you. Of you finding the strength to stand up for yourselves, to expose the truth, to break the cycle of manipulation and deceit. That takes immense courage." My phone buzzed one last time, an email from Lisa, the journalist. "Story picked up by national news outlets. Producer wants to do a documentary series on familial financial abuse. They're very interested in featuring your story, Ava, Chloe. Interested in sharing your experiences." I showed the email to Chloe. She nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. "If it helps other people recognize the signs," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "If it helps even one other person avoid what we went through, if it gives them the courage to get out and get help, then maybe some good can come from all of this." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in breathtaking shades of gold and crimson. The cabin was bathed in a warm, peaceful light. Somewhere in a prison cell, our parents were beginning their new reality. No more manipulation, no more schemes, no more control over our lives. Their reign of deceit was over. "You know what I don't feel?" I said suddenly, the words surprising even myself but feeling profoundly true. "What?" Chloe asked. "Guilty," I replied. "They kept telling us we were betraying them, that family doesn't do this to family, that we were cold and ungrateful. But they were wrong. They were so incredibly wrong. Family doesn't steal from family," Chloe finished, her voice strong and clear. "Exactly," I said, raising my glass of wine, toasting the quiet, beautiful view. "To real family, the ones you choose, The ones who build you up, support you, cherish you, and tell you the truth. The ones who don't break your trust for their own gain. As darkness fell over the mountains, we sat on the porch swing, listening to the wind whisper through the pines, the distant sounds of the forest settling in for the night. We were no longer haunted by the weight of obligation, no longer bound by the chains of their manipulation and deceit. Our parents had tried to steal my cabin, my financial security, my peace of mind, even our past and our relationship with each other. Instead, they had lost everything that truly mattered to them: their freedom, their reputation, and their daughters. The little mountain cabin stood strong against the darkening sky, its windows glowing with warm light. Not just a house anymore, but a beacon of resilience, a symbol of everything they couldn't take. My independence, my strength, my truth. And in the quiet, honest beauty of the mountains, surrounded by the enduring strength of the pines, I finally felt free. The keys were gone, lost in the wilderness, releasing the last physical hold they had over me. Some doors need to stay closed forever. Some trusts, once broken, can never be repaired. But others, like the bond between sisters who survived together, like the friendship and legal expertise that helped expose the truth, like the quiet, unwavering strength that comes from finally standing up for yourself, those grow stronger with every test. The world kept turning, the wind kept blowing, the pines stood tall, and in that enduring reality, I found my footing on solid ground.